Now, sometimes things go wrong, right? Great example. I swear we didn't plan that. But sometimes your tech fails you, and we can actually advance to our next slide here. So you just move on. You got to have a plan B. So today, I came with my laptop, my presentation on a flash drive, and notes. I figured one way I was covered. I've gone to speeches where I've emailed the speech to myself and had my iPad and my phone both there in case I had an issue, made sure everything was synced up. I've done all sorts of things, plus paper notes. I'd rather be over-prepared than lost. I haven't had to deal with hecklers, but I know it's an issue that we can face, and it's something that you should think about. Again, knowing your audience and going into it. Are you likely to face a heckler? If so, how are you going to deal with it? It's one of those things, those internal dialogues, you need to be prepared. If someone says something, am I going to ignore it, keep moving? Am I going to respond? Am I going to make a joke? And some of these things are situational. But be aware, in certain settings, it could happen. Now, when I say I've never dealt with hecklers, sure, I used to teach middle schoolers, but they hardly count, right? And of course, there's always nerves, there's bad news, there's last-minute changes. You know, you got bumped for somebody else. Sometimes we have to just go with the flow. Sometimes we have to just swallow it as best we can and just move on. We know that our bodies tell a story. Body language is fascinating, and if you just go back to the 60s and 70s, it was a totally new field of science. It's like, wow, revolutionary. We can look at the bodies and discover what's going on. And now we talk about body language casually. Small children, my kids talk about body language. Everyone understands it. And so we know that our bodies tell a story, right? So you're sitting there with an employee that you're disciplining, and you're saying, you do a great job, right? What did I just tell my employee?
But something.
Right? I may have said it verbally, but my body, crossed arms, shaking head, saying, I'm not buying what you're selling, right? So our bodies tell a story. We have to be very aware of that. But here is the mind blower. Our minds can change our bodies, right? So we can recognize, I'm doing this when I should be open. I should say, you do a great job. So our minds can change our bodies, but did you know our bodies can change our minds? This is the part that's really cool. You may have heard of this. There's a researcher by the name of Amy Cuddy, and she has studied something called power posing. And power posing are basically different things that you can do with your body to help you feel more confident. So we could advance to the next slide. Earlier, I asked half of you guys to pretend like you're heading into a really stressful situation. You were all curled up. You were feeling very powerless in a lot of ways. You were in what Amy Cuddy calls low power poses. And when you think about people who are waiting for something that's anxious, anxiety causing, right? You can see these three people are maybe waiting for a job interview. They're maybe waiting to go give a big presentation. They're anxious. They're all bound up on each other. But people who experience great things, if we go to the next slide, tend to celebrate, right? And so one of the studies that Amy Cuddy has talked about is the fact that blind people have been blind since birth, who run races, when they win, do this same pose, this power pose. I won, victory, this is awesome. That nonverbal communication, we've got a couple more here. So we see other people do this as well, right? Mix the classic, right? And then we've got Oprah, like, I rule the world, right? People who are strong, effective leaders show a difference in their brain chemistry. So there's two main hormones that we're going to talk about right here, testosterone and cortisol. And if you ever watch late night TV, you see a flurry of different commercials about these two hormones in different ways, right? So they talk about testosterone. And testosterone helps to increase dominance, aggressiveness, assertiveness. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And the cortisol makes you feel more anxious and makes you less confident. So what we found, or what I didn't do the study, I'd love to take credit, what Amy Cuddy and her group found was that people who engage in power poses actually had an increase in their testosterone after just 2 minutes of that power pose. Whereas people who were in the low power poses actually had a decrease in their testosterone. Now, on the flip side of that, if we can go to the next slide, cortisol. If you were in a high power pose, right, your Wonder Woman pose, or you're probably not going to sit in a job interview like this, right? But you might decide to drive to the job interview with your arms spread out across the other seat in the car, right? So those people found that their cortisol levels dropped, and people in the low power poses, all hunched up, their cortisol levels shot up. So the stress hormone was affected as well. So what does that mean? Obviously, you're not going to sit and do this in a job interview, or you're not getting the job, right? But posing like this, or like this, or like this. Now, we're not going to do the come hither stare, right, going into a job interview either. But those kinds of poses actually help you to feel more confident and ready to go out and tackle the world. Whereas if you are all hunched up, like you might naturally want to be, it's actually going to make you less capable of delivering a great speech. So, the next time you are headed into a stressful situation, whether it's giving a speech, or a job interview, or an important meeting, or a parent conference, any number of things, try that. Try the power posing. Because all of you, well, with the exception of you, are Wonder Women. And you can do that, and you can put the science to work for you. So I hope that some of the things that I've talked about today will be helpful, and I wish you all the best of luck with your own public speaking. Thank you for your time.